Hello, and welcome to What is Innovation, the podcast that explores the reality of a word that is in danger of losing its meaning altogether. This podcast is produced by OUTLAST Consulting, LLC, a boutique consultancy that helps companies use innovation principles to solve their toughest business problems. I'm your host, Jared Simmons, and I'm so excited to have David Metcalf on the show today. Based in Atlanta, David Metcalf brings a wide range of experience to Spencer Stuart's Leadership Advisory Services. He advises clients on succession planning, leadership consulting, executive assessment, and large-scale organization transformations. David has more than 15 years of experience in corporate strategy, law, financial services, and education. Before joining Spencer Stuart, David was Senior Vice President with Atlanta-based SunTrust Banks, where he oversaw incentives and training for employees at the bank's 1,400 branches and developed strategies to drive sales growth. Prior to this work, David was an engagement manager at McKinsey & Company, where he led culture transformation initiatives, large-scale change management programs, and corporate strategy engagements. Previously, David clerked in the United States District Court in the Southern District of Georgia, where he worked on civil and criminal matters. David graduated with distinction from the University of Virginia with a bachelor's degree in political and social thought and religious studies. He holds a master's degree from St. John's College and a law degree from Georgetown University, where he graduated cum laude. David, it's quite a career, my friend. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jared. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. I've been looking forward to it. We always kick off the conversation with a very simple question. What is innovation?
Well, as you and I talked about before, I don't know that I've got a great straightforward answer for it. I think innovation is kind of things that help people do the stuff they do better. And I could probably dress that up a little bit. So I might say something like innovation is, how we help people thrive, or innovation is how we help one another thrive.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's definitely not new gadgets. It's not a new app. It's not like some new way to pay for something that you were going to buy otherwise.
Right.
It's a little bit around like helping people look the way they're supposed to look.
Yeah. And so what does thrive mean to you? Tell me more about that word when you talk about people thriving.
Yeah. So I think about thriving. I mean, you think about a plant that thrives. It's potted in the right soil. It's getting the right kind of nutrients. It's growing and importantly, producing for the next generation. And I think people, when people thrive, they do a similar thing. They're rooted in a spot. They've got a power of place and of community, and they're productive. They're generating life, and I think importantly, generating life for the next generation. I love the phrase, civilizations flourish when old men plant trees in whose shade they will never sit. And I think there's something like we are thriving when we're making stuff for people who we will never meet. And I distinguish in that the notion of making stuff only for ourselves, or making stuff only for our families. So to me, when I think about thriving, there's this notion of community that has to play a role.
Yeah.
And of permanency, kind of like looking past right now toward past our immediate situation to what's best for all for a long time.
Right. I love that. I love the aspect of your definition of innovation that points to the outcome or to the benefit. Because what I'm hearing from you is that, for something to be innovative, it can't be for its own sake or for your own sake. It has to have sort of a more enduring, timeless, selfless element to it that looks past your own existence.
Yeah, like some notion of permanence.
Permanence.
That gives meaning, because to me, like incremental improvement that's just for like, we ran the 100-yard dash a little bit faster, like hard to get excited for me personally about that, because there's always going to be somebody else who kind of does that. But people who make lasting change and who leave a footprint, whether it be massive in the form of changed societies, or less so in the form of just a child who you've raised to be a good member of society. Both of those are really projections into the future with I think a kind of permanence that matters.
Well said. Another great word that fell in my ear while you were talking is meaning. when you think about meaning, and it's probably something people don't talk about a lot in connection with innovation. Um, I think it's a brilliant connection to make for a number of reasons. But tell me a bit more about why meaning shows up in your sort of definition of innovation.
I don't know why. I mean, I think part of it is that I think in part because I would define my type of innovation, the kind that I get excited about,
Mm-hmm.
it needs to contribute something. So forgive me as I sort of stumble through this, but I kind of want to set it up against innovation in the purely physical, kind of rapidly passing notion.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why, like, I think we often think innovation must be technological.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm suspicious of that. Like, we have seen a lot of technological innovation, but when I look at the events of your lifetime and my lifetime,
Sure.
it's not clear to me that we've seen as much lasting meaning, like made innovation
Right.
in like how we interact with each other
Mm.
and in how we order our society and how we show up in our relationships and our families. And so I know, I'm sorry, that's so philosophical, but like, I guess we've fallen in love with like technological innovation, and I'm guilty. I got the latest iPhone. I love it, but that to me, that's not like taking the human race kind of where it ought to go or where it could go. I love that Apple ad that has Robin Williams from Dead Poet Society, like
Oh yeah.
where he has that, he's doing that amazing quote, like poetry and like it makes your heart quicken, basically. And like
Right.
the reason I think that ad is so great, and people, I'm not the only one who thinks that, but other people too, it's like
Mm-hmm.
it just reminds us that we as people have the ability to touch and to impact things that have real meaning and permanence that will make your heart quicken and your pulse quicken. And like, I don't want to disrespect people who also drive technological innovation, but I believe those things ought to be created in service of human meaning, of
Mm-hmm.
transcendent meaning, in whatever form we can forge that.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, that's well said. I think the element of technology being in service of this social, meaning-driven definition of innovation is important and additive to any innovation conversation because it doesn't exclude the technology. It puts it in context and it gives it a direction, which I think, to your point, in the last sort of 30 years of innovation has been very how focused.
Mm-hmm.
And then, P&G and other companies made it very who focused. And I think there's an opportunity for us over the next 20, 30, 40 years to make it a little more why focused.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
And I think that's where your definition takes me is to, great, you can, make a phone bigger, you can make it faster, you can put 17 cameras on the back of it instead of 15. But why? And that I think is a question we all need to wrestle with, given where we sit, in early 2021, talking about innovation and looking out at the world we're looking out at. And that's why I'm so glad we're talking today, because your view of the world, the law degree, bachelor's degree in political and social thought, religious studies. And then, you and I were management consultants, the
Yeah.
that needle doesn't swing much further in the in the other direction. So, just the span of, your view of the world and the types of problems you've solved and the way you see things, I think is an important lens to try to help people apply to their innovative endeavors.
Mm.
Thinking about your definition of innovation, what isn't innovation in your mind?
I think innovation is not marginal improvement of impermanent things. So that's why I put like gadgetry there.
Right.
It's not like just getting through a day, right? But if innovation is around helping people to thrive, then any person is empowered to innovate when they teach a child how to ride a bike or teach a child how to discern right from wrong or like help a person in need to find their next meal. Like those things are like helping people to thrive.
Right.
Versus I don't want to, I'm not trying to throw too many stones at technology and those big tech companies, but like, it's not the like, hey, we added a decimal place to our calculator.
Right. Right. And what comes to mind is, I wonder, and there's been articles written about this all over the place, but if you look at the amazing things that the Gates Foundation has done for the world,
Sure.
and that if you look at the kind of innovative perspective he brought to the problems he wanted to solve and how,
Mm.
and that is funded, and the concepts were sort of incubated over a career driving technological innovation.
Yeah.
And his application of what he learned, thought, developed, and all of those things ultimately came to a humanistic view of innovation that you're describing.
Mm.
I think in a lot of ways. So if you look at that evolution, to me, it's from the technological to the more impact driven definitions of innovation. And I wonder if there's an opportunity for the next Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos or Richard Branson or whomever, to start there, to start with a construct that does good and moves technological aspect of society forward at the same time.
I think we've got a lot of examples in history of times when the technological innovators accumulated capital and then used it.
Sure.
Having accumulated enough, they could use it in a material way. So like Rockefeller's not a great guy, but he starts a bunch of libraries.
Right.
Rockefeller does libraries?
Carnegie. It was Carnegie.
Carnegie, thank you. So we got some of those. There's like sort of the redemption.
Yes.
that maybe when you have real material capital accumulated, you can use it in ways that can leave a lot lasting impact. And I think you see Gates doing a similar kind of thing. I love that. When folks have the ability, having accumulated capital, to then use it in a way that has great impact, that's terrific. I also don't, maybe I ran too far down the tracks of like anti-technological innovation. There was a book I read called Garden City that is a theology of work, and which talks about like whatever you are, whether you are a board member or a VP of innovation or a carpenter or a barista or wherever, in whatever spectrum, be great at that thing. Whatever you are, apply yourself to that thing and be great at it. Probably there are boundaries around immoral or amoral jobs where it's like, don't be a great kidnapper.
Sure.
But I like that also life-giving notion that it lends dignity to work of all kinds, that like we are, I believe personally, made to labor. Like I think that's part of our DNA as people. And so we should work and find fulfillment in those things. Maybe not finding ultimate meaning in them, but they are a way that we show who we are made to be, which is part of, it's now sort of a very roundabout sort of entry point to kind of why I do what I do. I spend a lot of time thinking about leadership. I assess leaders. I work with individual leaders to help them coalesce into teams, and I help those teams think about how they change their organizations. I do that because somewhere I read that we spend like 80% of our adult waking hours inside of organizations, companies.
Wow.
And if that's the case, that means it's more time than we spend with our families or in our places of worship or in our civil society. And so therefore organizations have an incredible impact on humans. Also, running parallel with that, like I said, I do believe we were created for a purpose and with dignity in work and in life. And so I fundamentally think we who work in organizations, for-profit organizations, but also not for profit, we all have this incredible impact on the people who work around us. Like I remember when you and I were consulting together, one of my clients was a railroad, and the frontline folks on the railroad were like, this is an incredibly stressful job, and if you do it poorly, people get really badly hurt and all this stuff. And these railroad folks, they averaged like 3 divorces per person. They would sleep, this is dating both of us a little bit, they would sleep with their Blackberries on their chests and said, in case something went wrong, like in the yard. And I just remember thinking, it must be really hard to go home and coach your kids' t-ball team. Or even just sit down at dinner and ask, how's everybody's day doing? That's where real like life happens, ought to happen. is like in your community, in your family. And so
Right.
this company, and to its credit, this company invested a lot in training these folks to do their jobs better.
Right.
When our companies operate better, we, the people who operate within them, get to look a little more like the thing we were created to be, the people we were supposed to be. So that's where that roots of like that notion of thriving for me lives. Is like,
right.
Oh, we don't just, we do have to make money. That's how we like earn the right to do this stuff. But
Right.
while doing that, are we creating an environment in which your people can thrive because they can do their jobs better, so they can go home less stressed out, so they can be better members of their community and better members of their family? Are we creating environments like that that are helpful to people thriving, or are we somehow continuing to just like drive in a way that doesn't allow them to thrive, but steals from their families in order to sort of put it in other places?
Right.
I dream of those win-wins where the leaders with whom I work can achieve the goals that they have and that their shareholders have that allow them to stay in business, while creating circumstances and environments in which their people can thrive, so that the best people want to work there, and with the best people working there, they can continue to improve and continue to outperform in a sustainable way. That's my sort of earthly nirvana. How do I help those kinds of environments get set up and begin to flourish?
Brilliant. I think the aspect of applying this mindset, applying this philosophy to work. So, your railroad example and kind of what you bring to your work as a consultant today, bringing that mindset of productive change for humanity, it frees you from the technological imperative of change. I think right now, when we think about moving something forward or advancing something, or introducing a new thing into the world, question is, well, what's your platform? What platform are you going to do it on? How does it have an app? These real, and I do the same thing. Like, these are the first questions that pop in your head. But you think about what your client did for their employees, what you help your current clients do for their employees. It's innovative stuff. It's changing the fabric of an organizations. It's changing lives. It's improving the outcomes for the organization. And I love the fact that it breaks this false notion of shifting value. So I sometimes talk about there are companies that shift value from their employees to the consumer. And I think that's a lot of companies have made a lot of money doing that, and people have tolerated it. A lot of industries operate that way. And what I think is truly innovative about what you're describing is that it's true value creation. So you're not saying you're creating value and then, ruining your employees' lives to better the lives of consumers. You're truly creating value if you can make your consumer and your employees' lives better at the same time.
Totally. I love that. And technology has a real role to play in that.
It does. It does. Like a subservient but important role. Yeah.
But like, for instance, let's use BP after the Deepwater Horizon incident.
Oh, right.
So along the way, BP probably before the incident layered on 5,000 safety protocols. And the way they did it was they emailed everybody. And they were like, read this and do it differently. Well, that happened in some cases and not in others. And the reason I think changing the way work gets done matters is that actually the technology folks in some of these companies have the ability, albeit an expensive ability, to re-engineer the way work gets done, to take away the manual stuff and to take away the ways that people slip up and forget to do things. Right. I saw this working in a bank. We would come up with an idea like, let's do something, and be like, great, just tell every teller to do it differently. I'm like, okay, we could do that.
Right.
Or it's going to cost us money. But what if we took this work out of the system and took the judgment out of it so that this person could focus on building the relationship with their client and not on like reading page 64, line 81 on the CFPB's disclosure.
Right.
Like that technology has a really important role in like allowing the people who do the work to do the things that only people can do. Otherwise, we do the really cheap thing, which is what you're talking about, shifting value from your worker to your user. where it's like, dear person, figure this out in this all day while you're doing this, and use your brain power to do that thing that we could, but it'll take us a little while to engineer out.
Yeah.
So down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but to me, it's like, yeah, technology should be in service of that.
That's a great point. And I think it also enables companies to keep people's attention, because I think sometimes when we do things the same way over and over and over again, here's a clipboard, sit in this room for 20 minutes, sign the clipboard that you were here. And that's your training. You do that over and over and over again. We as humans, we get desensitized to it. Right. And so I think technology has this refreshing aspect to it as well, where you break the monotony and get people re-engaged with the content in a way that that ensures that they're truly internalizing it.
Yeah. Totally.
And like you were saying, pulling steps out, pulling the repetitive tasks that are not user focused, that are not, human only kind of activities, that also just moves everybody forward. There's no loser in that situation. So as long as the company is willing to play the long game, I think those types of things don't get the attention they should when you're managing a company from one quarter to the next.
That's right, because quarter by quarter management leads to manual workaround and a lot of patches. Rather than looking deep, solve the root cause with a thoughtful, meaningful, permanent solution.
Right.
Because it's really easy for the folks in middle management, and I've been one, to be like, that's a manual workaround, just figure it out. Like they'll get it. Well, everybody does that. These are well-meaning manual workarounds, and pretty soon everybody on the front line's got like 600 manual workarounds.
Exactly.
That can't be how this thing gets done right.
Yeah. No, I've been right there too.
We're both guilty.
Exactly. Exactly. So we're allowed to have this conversation because we know of what we speak, for sure. Yeah, I've definitely said, okay, well, how much time is that really going to cost you? 5 minutes? Just do that, and we'll figure it out later. But later never comes.
Never comes. That's right.
Yeah. David, based on, kind of everything you've seen and your unique view of things, one thing I'm super curious about is any advice you would have for innovators or people out there, in technological roles in whatever environment. I mean, you've been in courts, you've been in boardrooms, you've been all over you've been all over the corporate world and seen a lot of different things. Any advice based on your take on things?
I mean, I love where you took us early, which is like, ask the why. Like, why are we doing this thing? And that might be for our technological friends who, why are we doing this thing? Like, I remember the debate around, pretty soon you'll be able to Photoshop videos.
Right.
And everybody was like, well, yeah, we're going to release that and allow everybody to do it. And there are a whole bunch of harmful potential side effects, but everybody was like, if I don't release it, somebody else will. It was this sort of like, wah. And so that's kind of like, you're a member of this society. What's your responsibility? So that's one.
Yeah. And
then for leaders, I do think, in addition to that sort of why question, like, remembering the inherent dignity and goodness of the people in every part of every organization that you work with. Now, I know that's easy to say and sounds good maybe, but how do you as a leader, as a CEO, contribute either to helping people to thrive or to helping them not thrive? And every day, every leader has to make trade-offs. And then some days you have great days and you're really advancing the ball in one direction, and other days are not so great and you don't.
Right.
But I do think we are part of the frustration that we see in one side of our, maybe even both sides of our political nightmare, is that we have often lost sight of the people part of all of this, and the people that we are touching as leaders. And maybe a conversation for another day, but as a leader, your responsibility, and folks talk about like the triple bottom line, and those things are nice, but like, we have a real responsibility to the people whose families are affected by our work wherever we are. And I I know that's a hard thing to keep in mind when you're, being asked for, the rollout plan for your whatever that's 3 weeks behind because somebody in corporate messed it up. I get that's hard, but I do think that we sometimes ignore, often to our peril, the long tentacles that our work have and the ways that people, their lives, their families are affected by the decisions we make, the things we say, the ways we show up. Those things are meaningful, and those things are kind of like they will have long and lasting meaning for the people who are affected by them.
Well said. Well said. Thank you so much for your time, David, and for diving in. I know your bio is lengthy and you've done amazing things, but nowhere in there does it say innovation. So I appreciate you being open to joining me and chatting about this, because I've definitely learned a lot, and I think others will as well.
That's right. It's a treat. It's great to be with you. Anytime you and I get to talk, it's a privilege. And so thanks for taking the time to talk today.
I appreciate it. Have a great day, and we'll talk again soon, my friend.
You too. Have a good one.
All right. Take care. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this week's show. You can drop us a line on Twitter at OUTLAST LLC, OUTLAST LLC, or follow us on LinkedIn, where we're OUTLAST Consulting. Until next time, keep innovating, whatever that means.